The village of Eek was a world unto itself, tucked away in a valley surrounded by the towering, enigmatic forest of Garaba. The forest loomed like a fortress, its canopy so dense that sunlight barely kissed the earth beneath. The villagers lived with a profound reverence and fear of Garaba, for its ancient, gnarled trees were said to house spirits older than time itself, though no one ventured beyond its edges. Every family in Eek had a story of someone who had dared to enter and never returned. The forest was a mystery, a myth, and a warning. In this insular world lived Ire, a girl who was as much a mystery to the villagers as the forest they feared. From the moment of her birth, under the ominous glow of a rare blood moon, she had been set apart. The midwives who delivered her recoiled at the strange mark on her pomade glowing, intricate symbol that seemed alive with an energy they couldn't comprehend. The elder of the village, summoned to interpret this anomaly, declared the child both blessed and cursed. Though he refused to elaborate, Ire grew up an outsider, her mere presence enough to send whispers rippling through the village. She was not like other children. Where they were boisterous and carefree, she was solemn and distant. Her eyes, a piercing amber, seemed to see beyond the physical world, unsettling those who met her gaze. She rarely played with others, preferring to wander alone along the riverbank or sit beneath the ancient banyan tree that stood at the village's edge. Her mother, Amara, was her only true ally, a widow shunned for her unshakable belief in the gods' justice. Amara saw Ire not as an aberration, but as a gift. She loved her daughter fiercely, even as the villagers' suspicion turned into outright hostility. They called Ire a witch, a bringer of ill fortune, blaming her for every drought, poor harvest, or sick child. But Amara's unwavering devotion shielded Ire from their worst cruelty. Still, there was something about Ire that even Amara did not understand. Every night, long after the village had gone to sleep, Ire would rise silently from her mat and slip out into the darkness. Draped in a dark cloak, she would make her way to the edge of the forest, where she would stand, her marked palm raised toward the trees. A faint glow would emanate from her hand, illuminating her face in the dim light of the stars. Though no one dared to follow her, some villagers claimed to hear strange murmurs and see faint lights flickering in the forest when she disappeared within its depths. Unbeknownst to them, Ire's nocturnal journeys were not acts of rebellion or curiosity, they were acts of duty. Deep within Garaba lay an ancient entity named Arakan, a being older than the forest itself. Arakan was neither wholly good nor evil, but it was powerful, and its protection was the only reason the malevolent spirits of Garaba did not spill into Eek. For reasons Ire could not fully comprehend, she had been chosen as the vessel through which Arakan's power was channeled. It was a burden she bore in silence, knowing the village's survival depended on her secret pact. For years, this fragile balance endured. Though the villagers feared and resented her, they prospered. The river flowed steadily, their crops flourished, and illnesses were rare. But as Ire grew older, the toll of her role became more apparent. She often returned from the forest pale and trembling, her amber eyes dimmed with exhaustion. Amara worried for her, but Ire never explained, brushing off her mother's concerns with quiet deflections. Trouble arrived one fateful evening, just as the village was preparing for its annual harvest festival. The celebration was a time of joy and abundance, a rare occasion when even the poorest families found reason to smile. But this year, the festival was marked by the arrival of an unwelcome guest. Prince Tozen, the arrogant and entitled son of the regional king. Tozen had come with a retinue of soldiers and a smile that did little to mask his disdain for the simple villagers. From the moment Tozen laid eyes on Ire, he was captivated. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, wild, untamed, and utterly indifferent to his charms. Used to women fawning over him, Tozen found her rejection infuriating. His initial fascination turned into an obsession, and he began spreading rumors about her among the villagers. "She's a witch," he hissed to anyone who would listen. "Why else would she venture into Garaba at night? What has her presence ever brought us but fear and misfortune?" His words found fertile ground in the villagers' already suspicious minds. Their long-held fears resurfaced with a vengeance, and soon, even Amara's closest friends turned their backs on her. Tozen, emboldened by his success, escalated his campaign. He accused Ire of consorting with dark forces and claimed her nightly rituals endangered the entire village. The elder, torn between his duty to protect the village and his unease about Tozen's motives, hesitated to intervene. One night, as Ire prepared to enter the forest, she was ambushed by a group of mercenaries hired by Tozen. They sprang from the shadows, ropes and blades at the ready. But as they closed in, Ire's palm ignited with a blinding light. The mercenaries screamed as an unseen force flung them back, their bodies crumpling like discarded puppets. The forest seemed to respond, its trees creaking and groaning as though alive. When the light subsided, Ire stood alone, trembling and tearful, her power leaving her shaken. The attack only deepened the villagers' mistrust. Tozen seized the moment, storming into the elder's hut to demand action. "She's a threat to us all," he bellowed. "If you won't stop her, I will." Reluctantly, the elder called for a gathering in the village square. That night, a mob formed outside Amara's hut, their torches casting flickering shadows across the walls. The villagers chanted for justice, their fear and anger drowning out any voices of reason. Inside, Amara clung to her daughter, her heart breaking at the sight of Ire's resigned expression. "Run," Amara whispered urgently. "Go to the forest. Arakan will protect you." "I won't leave you," Ire replied, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Before they could argue further, the door was torn open and the mob surged inside. In the chaos, Ire unleashed her power, a wave of light that scattered the villagers. But she was careful not to harm them, even as they shouted for her death. It was Tozen who ended the stalemate. Flanked by his guards, he stepped forward with a twisted smile. "If you won't surrender, then you'll burn," he declared. Flames roared as torches were thrown, and the hut was quickly consumed. Amara shoved Ire toward the back door, coughing as smoke filled the room. "Go!" she screamed. "Live!" Tears blurring her vision, Ire obeyed. She fled into the forest, her heart shattering as the cries of her mother and the roar of the flames echoed behind her. Deep within Garaba, Arakan appeared before her, its form shifting between shadow and light. "They have broken the pact," it said, its voice resonating like the rumble of an earthquake. "Garaba's protection is no longer theirs." Ire, overcome with grief and fury, clenched her fists. "Then let them suffer," she whispered, her voice cold and unrecognizable. The days that followed were marked by calamity. The river dried up, the crops withered, and a mysterious plague swept through the village. The once proud Prince Tozen fell ill, his body ravaged by the same sickness he had mocked others for succumbing to. The villagers, desperate and terrified, turned to the elder for answers. He searched the ancient texts, finally uncovering the truth about Ire and the pact with Arkan. Realizing their folly, the villagers ventured into the forest to beg for forgiveness. They found Ire beneath the banyan tree, her amber eyes glowing faintly as she stared into the distance. The elder knelt before her, his voice trembling. "We were wrong," he said. "We see now the depth of your sacrifice. Please forgive us." The villagers echoed his plea, their voices thick with remorse. Even Tozen, pale and gaunt, stumbled forward to join them. "I was blind," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "Please, give us a chance to make amends." Ire regarded them in silence for a long moment before speaking. "Your repentance is not mine to judge," she said. "But if you truly wish to atone, you must prove your sincerity." Under her guidance, the villagers rebuilt Amara's home, transforming it into a shrine to her memory. They fasted and prayed, offering gifts at the altar. On the third night, the air grew still, and a brilliant light descended upon the forest. Arkan appeared, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "The pact will be restored," it declared. "But remember this moment, for your survival depends on it." With that, the river flowed once more, the crops revived, and the plague lifted. The villagers wept with relief, their gratitude boundless. Yet when they turned to thank Ire, she was gone. Some claimed to see her silhouette among the trees, watching over them from afar. Years later, a statue of Ire was erected in the village square, her amber eyes carved to capture the strength and sorrow of her spirit. Her story became a legendary tale of sacrifice, redemption, and the delicate balance between humanity and the divine. Though she was never seen again, her presence lingered in the rustling leaves of Garaba, a guardian bound to the land she had saved, and the people who had finally learned to honor her sacrifice.